Welcome to Prosperity Talk with the financial prosperity coach, Christopher Music, who has been a featured guest on CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox affiliates, sharing his 20-plus years of experience in financial principles and how to apply them to your life and business.
Hello, this is P. Christopher Music, the financial prosperity coach, and I'd like to welcome you to Prosperity Talk. Today we have a very special guest who has been a practice management and business management consultant for over 40 years. He has traveled all over the world, delivering workshops and seminars and speaking engagements in over 38 countries. He has been seen on Larry King, Tom Snyder, Voice of America, and other programs. I would like to introduce one of the most exceptional business consultants that I've ever met. He's going to be here talking about the natural laws of management. I'd like to welcome Arte Maren.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what got you interested in this business consulting gig over 40 years ago?
You know, I could say it was an accident, and it appeared that way. My mother told me I was always inquisitive. I loved solving problems. An enigma to me makes my day. In 1970, I had dinner with the assistant director of, I hate to say this, hair. You'll have to explain that to some of the... And he was telling me about this problem they were having. And I said, I grabbed a napkin and I said, you know, what's happening here? And I kind of realigned some things and kind of looked at the structure and I showed him, and he says, well, that's really interesting. Can I have that napkin? Just, be my guest, And I didn't think another thing about it. And about a week later, I got a call from Michael Butler, who just was the producer of Hair. And he said, I read your napkin, and we want to hire you as a consultant. Honestly, I had no... I was doing some business work. I didn't know anything about consulting. I had just started studying the management technology of Mr. Hubbard. And I said, well, actually I was embarrassed. I said, well, that's fine. I really can't make it, And so he called again a few days later. And every time I would refuse, by the way, the real reason is that I had a job Monday to Friday. And I couldn't go anywhere. So I made excuses and so on, which he took as negotiation. And he would keep calling back and saying, well, all right, why don't we do this? And it got a little ridiculous. And one night I thought, all right, what's my real problem here? Because it really wasn't time. And by the way, that's something we all learn. It's never time or money, which is another entire seminar. I said, it's not time. And it's certainly not the money. What is it? And what it was is that I didn't know that I could be of value to him at all. And I didn't want to go to Chicago, waste his time, not knowing really what to do. I mean, all I did is produce a napkin, basically. So I decided I was going to handle that. And the next time he called, I said, okay, I will do it under one condition. You can pay my airfare, and you can put me up at the hotel. I will do whatever you need to do. I couldn't even tell him what I was going to do. And but at the end, if you're not entirely satisfied, I'm not taking the check. Which he thought was just, an amazing thing. He didn't know it was coming out of total fear. It sounded like the most professional thing he ever heard in his life. And so I went. And they had me in the meetings, and I took my notes. Yes, on a typewriter. And at the end, I presented my findings, so to speak. And they read it over, and they said, wow, this is fantastic. Bob, come here, look at this. And he gave me the check. And on the way home, and I so remember this distinctly, on the plane, looking at the check and staring at it, and thinking, what is this? What is this kind of business? And this is where I got hooked. What is this kind of business that you help someone and they pay you? Wow. And I might say, of course, I'm speaking for every single person in this audience. That was an amazing thing. And that was the start. So I went home. I did not quit my day job. I made a card up, and I did nothing until I went to a chiropractor. Now, this is where it goes into the professions. A large portion of my career over these 40 years was spent in professional offices. A lot of reasons for that, which we don't need to go into, but basically, again, this help factor. And I had this chiropractic adjustment, and I thought, wow, that was really good. And I said to the doctor, you know, I'd like to know more about what you do. I am a consultant, and I'd like to maybe exchange. I'll consult you, and I'll learn more about the business, and you can adjust me or whatever. And he thought that was a great idea. So I said, okay, so let's meet on Tuesday. Bring your marketing director and personnel. You know, I'm speaking to a 3-person office, right? And I'm telling him your marketing director. And he looked at me kind of blankly, and he said, I don't have a marketing director. Which I was, you know, like stymied. All right, what about, you know, No, I don't personnel. Well, okay, but then how do you get new patients, you know, if you don't have a marketing director? Because you're in a room all day working with people. And I left that on the side, and I said, okay, all right, well, I tell you what I need to do is I need to see your numbers, right? So how about statistics? Oh, yeah, statistics, no problem. Yeah, I got plenty of statistics. And he immediately went and he grabbed his book, right? You know, that book that you put the numbers in. And here's, you know, for the last 9 years, I have every single stat, every week, number of new patients, patient visits, collections. I said, wow, all right, that's pretty impressive. So what do you do with this? What do you mean? What do you do with the numbers? And there was this kind of pause. And, well, at the end of the week, numbers go in the book. I look at them. If they're up, that's great. And if they're down, then we hope that they're better next week. And I knew I had a career. Okay? At that very moment, that was my decision, like, okay, I'm going to do this. There's a lot of reasons why I wanted to do that. Number one was I knew that, and as I found out further, that in the professions, there was a lot of instruction on procedure, but procedure is not management. Procedure is what you get out of the laws of management. What the front desk does comes out of a greater law, you see, in terms of the fundamentals of service and a whole bunch of other things. So I was very excited, and that, in essence, was the start of my working with professions, that went from chiropractic to veterinary medicine to optometry to, you know, DOs and ODs and, you know, all the letters. So that's the answer to that question.
Okay, so based on your experience...
Ask a speaker a question. You're not getting a 3-word answer. That I can tell you. That's not going to happen.
That's fine with me. We got plenty of time. Okay, so if you could choose 3 areas that a private practice professional, that were crucial to that private practice professional achieving stress-free growth, what would they be?
Let me start with the thinking process of the professional. As you know, I'm finishing a book now on the doctor as the professional and the doctor as the executive, is what I meant. And what I found over these many, many years is that there's no, if I can use the word, assumption of identity as an executive, as an owner, it tends to be a bit narrow as the practitioner. Most of you I know have been studying Hubbard management, so you know there are at least 3 major divisions. There's administration, which is the mind, or captures the identity of patients and all that data and so on. There's technical or delivery or operations, which delivers the product. And there's marketing that promotes the delivery, which says, we've got these results, we've had these success stories, and that goes out to the environment. That attracts people who then come in through the mind, get identified, put into the database, routed over to delivery who delivers, and you have this perpetual circular activity with one major point that I haven't brought up. And what's that? It's the executive director. That's the person above these 3, because that person is coordinating the activity. And by the way, Hubbard says that coordination is the essence of management. If we were to go to a concert tonight, imagine this. We're at a concert, the orchestra's out there, they're warming up. Out comes the conductor, taps his thing, and starts. And they all start playing, and it's beautiful. And then in the middle, he leaves the stage and goes and sits down to play first violin. And we're thinking, what is he doing? And now what happens? The flutes have a flute solo coming up. They're excited. So they start playing a little louder, okay? Maybe a little faster. The violins, they kind of know this, so they pick up. And what is happening here is we're losing coordination. We're losing harmony. Because why? Because nobody is taking responsibility for coordinating the activity. Hence, this position is the most important in the practice. Now, I'm not saying don't see patients anymore. I'm saying what I'm saying. This person is the most important position in the practice. And by the way, that's why it's up here. You notice it's not in the mechanics. You've heard the expression, it's far better to work on the practice than in the practice. Well, you can't work on the practice if you're in it. You're stuck in the mechanics and you have no what? Objectivity. You're not exterior to the action. You can't slow that one down or speed that one up or coordinate or demand more from this side. And when you do, you better organize that side because they're going to get overwhelmed. So this practitioner as the executive starts as a thinking process. I mean, there's a lot more to it, obviously. But it starts as a thinking process to say, all right, yes, I'm the executive. That moment that you determined that you were going into practice was the highest moment of your executive career. Okay? That was create. That was, I'm going to open an office. Now, I'm going to open an office really didn't come from the optometrist or the veterinary medical doctor. It came from the owner. Yet that position tends to doesn't get the same kind of respect. I'll give you another example. How much time have you spent learning the art and science of your industry? Years and years and years. But how much time learning what an executive is all about? Now, almost all of you are in programs to do that, and that's terrific. But I'm going to take it to the next step, too, and say, my next question would be, when do you wear the hat? When do you wear the hat? Well, I'm wearing the hat all day, I go this, then I check on that. And, okay, all right, I'll buy that. That's cope. That's a lot of cope, and you need to do that, but where's the organize? Where does the organize happen? Well, I'll tell you, it happens when you knowingly and determinedly and scheduled wear your executive hat. That means Tuesday from 4 to 6 and Thursday from 1 to 5. I don't know what the hours are, but that's when you're not handling patient traffic, client traffic. You're not dealing with inter-office issues. You're wearing the executive hat. And at that point, if you see that as a separate issue, the next thing is, well, what do I do? Yeah, I could do that. All right, every Tuesday from 2 to 5, I'm going to be the executive. So you sit down and you say, okay, I'm being the executive. But we're not talking about contemplating your executive navel. We're saying, what does an executive do? Okay, what are the activities? And I'm going to get into that a little more in some other questions. But the point I'm making is that you have that hat, you need to wear that hat, and certainly at some select times. And then you have an agenda that you go through when you're wearing that hat. The first of which, by the way, are statistics. Because what an executive needs, it's pretty much the first line of my book, the oxygen for the executive is data. But the first data you want is concentrated into a statistic, not narrative, not 4,000 reports. You don't have time for that. What you have time for is give me something give me some symbols that can immediately tell me where to look, because I don't have a lot of time. And that's what a stat does. Stat doesn't tell you what happened. It says, you know what, if you look here, that's likely to be fruitful. That's likely to be a good return on your time. And that's the first thing you're doing as an executive. And I might add, and this is getting further into, it's covered in my book to some great degree, and that is that the stats are in a graph. That was another thing I said to the doctor. After he showed me the book and he told me, and I asked him what he did, then I said, well, are they on a graph? No, they're in a book. Statistics, if you know how they're used, will talk to you. But they go up on a wall. See? Most of you, given what I know about your practices, should be running with about 10, 12 graphs, maybe 15. And stats are all about comparison. They don't mean anything alone. Oh, I made $1 million last 6 months in my practice. Wow, that sounds great, except he spent $1.5 million. So a datum has to be compared to another datum. And when the graphs are up on the wall, you can look for anomalies. You can look for comparisons. You can look for, if this is up, that should be up, why isn't it? And you can easily see where you should put your attention, which, by the way, does not start with a down graph. All too often I've seen this error, and that is, if the numbers are off, if the stats are down, everybody wants to know. Well, you certainly want to know. What's happening? You're going around the practice, you're asking, you're inquiring. You really want to know why those stats are down. And then maybe they turn around, they go up. Now stats are up. Now what? Let me say, all right, stats are up. You're not looking? You don't want to know why? No, there was a reason why the stat's down, but there's no reason why it's up. That was karma. Right. The time to get busy is when the stats are up. So when you're doing stat analysis, the first area you're looking for is, where are we making money? Where are we getting production, and why, and how do I reinforce it? You get what you validate, as Hubbard says. You get what you validate. So we're going to take a look at that and reinforce it, and then we're going to deal with what we have to uncover, etc. So this viewpoint that I'm the executive, I'm the CEO of my business, and I'm going to have a time when I schedule that activity. It's very important to make that separation. I'm going to give you another example. I was consulting a stockbroker, probably 86, 87, and he made, at that time, was making about $400,000 or $500,000 a year, never had a penny. And I said, look, Stan, we need to work this out. Do you have any idea what a PO is? No. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. See that desk there? That is your desk for the CFO of your business. It's not just him. That's CFO, okay? So that's your financial officer hat, okay? And the way that operates is before you spend any money of any significance, you have to, as the stockbroker, you have to write a purchase order and bring it to the chief financial officer and put it in the basket, okay? And then the chief financial officer will determine from a higher position whether it's a valid expense or not. So he thought I was out of my mind, but he said, fine, because he's paying me, so he follows. Okay. So about a week later, I get this phone call, and he's laughing. And I said, what's so funny? He says, well, I did what you said. I went to a trade show, and there was this toy that I absolutely wanted. It was $3,500. So I took out my credit card, and I thought, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to write the PO. So he goes back to his office, writes the PO, drops it into the basket of the CFO, which I purposely had on the other side of the room. He sat down, picked it up, read it over. Not approved. Okay. He disallowed his PO. What's the point here? The point is you need the separation, you see? And you don't want to collapse. And that separation is the senior person. Personally, if your business is all about helping the greatest number of people, then what we're talking about in terms of wearing the executive director hat is actually a personal integrity matter, not just ease of activity. Well, what do I mean? Well, if you want to help the greatest number of people, then can you do that as a practitioner where you definitely have a ceiling? Well, yeah, but I can bring in another associate. Okay, fine. There's just going to be a ceiling there. I could bring in another one. I could open 5 other offices. Yeah, you can do all of that. But at some point, there's what I consider a natural evolution where you are the executive and you are coordinating all of this help that's going out into the environment. So I see that as a natural evolution, provided you understand that the laws of management and you become a better manager. How good a manager do you have to be? There's $1 million question. Figuratively and literally. You have to be as good an executive as you are a practitioner. That would make sense. Otherwise, there's an imbalance. You're the most brilliant veterinary medicine doctor ever in the world. There's no animal you can't fix. Uh-oh. You just inherited a joyful obligation. Okay? And you have an obligation to make sure that you see the greatest number of clients. So, again, the first part would be this, I don't know what to refer to it as, thinking process or assumption of being the executive. Along with that is eradicating any fear of expansion. Every now and then I'll have a practitioner tell me, no, I don't want a big practice. Headaches. No. All right, so a small practice is problem-free, right? No, what they're really saying is, I don't know the laws of expansion. I don't know how to do it in a less effortful way. Because in point of fact, and the larger practices in here will agree with me. It's easier to run a bigger practice. And I'm not even talking about time off. I'm not talking about more money. I'm just saying ease of activity. But you have to lose that fear, and with that, more technical know-how so you can do it. I, not long ago, returned from Bogota, Colombia, where I have a big construction client. And they were hitting a ceiling every year, which was tens of millions of dollars. And I was going over some of the Hubbard datums on the subject of expansion. And I made an observation, and I gave him a truth, which was, there's no such thing as overexpansion. See, he had made a comment to me, like, well, I think the problem is that we expanded too quickly, so we're going to cut down on our expansion. And I gave him the Hubbard datum, which is there's no such thing as overexpansion. There is only underorganization. And he sat back, and he listened to it, and he brought in his staff, and they were up like 40% from that one datum because he lost the fear, and he realized that it was really about underorganization and was able to move forward. That's what I mean about the thinking process in terms of being an executive. Many of you heard that the sequence is be, do, have. It's not have by, backwards, it's be. So what's the first B? The first B is I'm an executive. And I'm going to do the executive things, and I'm going to have executive results. It's amazing, in the ordinary world, and I mean outside of the professions, Joe Smith opens up a store selling cups or whatever, and he learns how to do it. He hires a bunch of people to sell cups. They do very well, and he has an office. He has a store manager, and he's not in the store anymore. He's doing whatever else he's doing. And this is what usually happens in the, quote, other world than the one we live in. But somehow I think practitioners feel like this is what they must do. See, they have to, you see, and that would be a problem. All right, so that's, now that I've taken up all my time on the first question, let me go to point 2. Which is a failure to manage by statistics. That's simple. I'm not going to go into that in great detail. You can get my training and my book for that. I have an audio training program as well, which will be here tomorrow. And that goes into all the factors of management by stats, which most of you have already from your training. But it's a failure to really utilize that and utilize it in a very consistent way. I can't tell you how many state associations of various practitioners, whether it's ODs or DOs or whatever, where I ask for a raise of hands, how many use statistics? Well, that's not even 100%, which is pretty interesting. And then I start asking around, like, okay, so how many have an end of week? And you know what? Not everybody raises their hand. How could you not have an end of week? Well, what does that mean? It just goes like on and on and on. We're going to play tennis. When does the game end? I don't know. We'll just keep playing, and in the middle we'll decide that's the end of that one, and then we'll start. You see, so there's a protocol for management by stats. It follows a very, very specific procedure, and that is certainly, after giving it a lot of thought, that is the second one. And the last one for this question is marketing. But personally, by marketing, I had to look at, well, what do we mean? Are we talking about internet? Are we talking about, you're getting plenty of that. I'm not going to go near it. But I'm going to tell you what I know without question is the most economical, the most ethical, and the most effective. And that's what I'm doing right now. Speaking. speaking in front of groups, putting yourself in front of the public who are interested in your product or service. There's lots of ways to do that, lots of approaches to get yourself in front of groups. Christopher's been studying that very, very heavily over the last year. There's lots of data on it, but the point is, it's effective because you're touching somebody personally, and that can't be done. I don't care whether it's an email or a blog. They see the sincerity, they can feel it, and that to me is the greatest way of gaining a practice and growing a practice. So that's that.
Well, thank you.
All right, what's the next one?
Well, the next one is regarding finances. What do you think is the greatest error a private practice practitioner would make in the area of finance?
As you've studied Hubbard, you've probably come across the datum control equals income. To not have the full knowledge of exactly what the metrics are of your practice. Now, I'm not talking about you now need to track 50 numbers. There are key points that are vital. We can even call them the vital signs of your practice. You have to know what they are, and you have to be religious in knowing what they are on a regular basis. Now, I'm not saying every day, but definitely for a professional practice, it's definitely weekly. I mean, what I tell my clients is that they're looking at the numbers daily, they're monitoring the numbers to some degree daily, they're evaluating weekly, unless they have multiple locations, at which point it's every 2 or 3 weeks. And they're also keeping mind of the trend by watching them on a monthly basis and a quarterly basis. So that would be the first part. Again, going back to the knowledge of it. And the second is, this is very, very big, by the way. It may sound smaller than I didn't mean to make it smaller. It's the staff that make it grow. If you think that you're going to be at the front of this practice, pulling it to 6 or behind it and pushing it to, no, it's employees who make it grow. Now, if that's true, and never mind that you should have the right employees, and that's another entire seminar, but it does mean that your key people are in on the finance meeting, which, by the way, is done as close to the end of the week as possible. So an error I see is, oh yeah, we end our week on Friday. Why? Because that's the end of the week. Never mind, there's no reason for it. And we hold our meeting to review everything on Tuesday afternoon. And I often ask them, what are you looking at Tuesday afternoon? It's certainly not looking at present time. And why are you ending on Friday anyway? Well, because, that's when we end our week. No. The criteria of when you end your week is what is the best time for us to review our stats. If that's Tuesday at 9 a.m., you're ending your week on Monday at 5. Monday at 5, that's weird. Who ends their week Monday at 5? I don't know, I don't care. The fact is that that's what works. In Hubbard's system, we have a definition of truth. The definition is that which works. Simple. So you end at 5. And by the way, there's some other built-in positives about ending it on Monday at 5. Because when you end on Friday and then you have the whole weekend and they come in Monday, by 12:30 on Monday, you're getting some action. You end your week on Monday at 5, we're already rolling into the next weekend. Not only that, but it doesn't seem to end because what are they looking at over the weekend? Their stats, what's going to happen on Monday, you see, and all of that. So the point is you end your week at time the closest to do that meeting, which is your executive council meeting. And that's a time where you look at productivity. Okay? You do your income planning. Where's our income coming from? And what's our numbers? And where do we need to be? with the other employees, because it's employees who make it grow. And then you're going to look at your finances, of which you have plenty in terms of what Christopher is doing. See, in terms of analyzing, in terms of a financial plan that extracts the immediate expenses off the top and creates one of the most important datums in the world, which is income demand. So that would be the second one on as far as finance is concerned. And the last for finance is what Hubbard refers to as the bean theory, meaning making sure that you're investing in the areas of the practice that return on investment. I know it sounds like a datum you would only use outside, right? But downstat areas do not get energy. Why? Because downstat area is going to suck up the energy, right? It's the upstat areas that get energy. And the downstat areas, if they want energy, they better get their act together. Now, I realize I'm being very oversimplified, but the bean theory is a fundamental truth in terms of finance.
Awesome. That is good. Thank you very much.
Good.
So, Artie, I want to bring up here your book, The Natural Laws of Management. And this is written by Artie, and it's actually based on the works of L. Ron Hubbard. Now, I've read this book at least a couple times, and I think it's probably the most efficient and effective book on introducing these natural laws of management. I mean, it really does deliver what the title of the book says. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be surveyed for this and all that stuff as you had written it. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to share with the audience, we have a very special situation with Artie. Artie's been around, forgive me, long enough, that he actually...
This is something I'm proud of, considering the alternative.
Well, of course, it's true. But Artie had the actual privilege, he shared this with me over of his place one night over a social event, that he actually knew and spent time with L. Ron Hubbard, personally. And so I just wanted him to share a bit about his experience and about his understanding and his communication with Mr. Hubbard regarding what the intentions were of this system that he created for business management and the effects that it would create. So Artie, why don't you share with us what your experience was with Mr. Hubbard?
Sure. What I want to share with you is very much within the realm of management. Certain characteristics that he had that work in the practice very well. And the first and most stark was in working with him, what I thought my capabilities were and what he thought my capabilities were two different things. The demand to act way above what I understood were my capabilities was constantly there. And it acted as the most incredible validation. In other words, if I would even hint at having trouble doing something or that I couldn't do it, which I never did, it would be taken as, what? What are you telling me? You know, it's just tremendous confidence. Now, how does that translate into the practice? How many of us are guilty of giving an order? Okay, well, I need this done by Tuesday. And then they turn around and you think, well, lots of luck with that one. What is that? If you don't think it's going to happen, why are you issuing the order? Are you trying to prove that you shouldn't have hired them in the first place? And by the way, if you think they don't pick that up, just because you didn't say it, they're picking it up. Right? They can feel the lack of confidence. Years later, I actually did a demonstration as soon as I went home, having felt this and learned it, about this high expectation. See? And my son's job was to take out the garbage every day at 4 o'clock. Every Thursday at 4 o'clock. And what did I do usually? I'd wait, and it'd be 5:30, and I know it's not out there. Chris, did you take it? And you go to the whole routine. This time, I went to him at 2 o'clock, and I said, all right, so it's out? What's out? The garbage. Oh, Dad, it's 2 o'clock. Oh, okay. I knew you'd take care of it. And I just put a lot of high expectation. And you know what? The next week, it was out there by 2:15. But all the haranguing that I've done months before never got it out there. You see? So this one factor of high expectation, which is this really great validation. There's so much more. Extreme high productivity, obviously, if you look at the output of what he's done. But then you can say, yeah, well, I've seen many of the books that he's written, and I've heard, there's millions and millions of words. And this is, in my opinion, and it reflects into the practice. And that is, how much do you like the effect that you create in your practice? I don't mean the comfort, the money, or even the accolades. I'm talking about you have helped somebody see, or you've helped their animal, that's the end result of what you're all about. And that's, in my opinion, what drove Herbert, was this factor of someone has been uplifted to some degree. And with that, they can be uplifted further. And you're doing the same thing. And by the way, if I was to leave you with a pearl, it would be this. Where's your quality control? If I went into a factory and I said, what's your quality control numbers? What's your defect ratio? Tell me how, they'd rattle it off and they tell me, yeah, this is what happens, and we have a defective cup. It goes here, and then it goes there, and then it goes there. I say to a practitioner, how many problem clients or patients do you have right now? I don't know. Okay, well, that's kind of a flunk, because you should have a pretty good idea, because last week it was 53, and we're pushing it down to 49 this week. That's what is ideal. Okay, you don't know, fine. So, but you can get that list. Well, how? There's no routing for someone. I'm being very general now, but there should be a routing for someone not doing optimally. What do we mean by that? In your estimation and theirs. Patient says, I'm not doing well. I don't care how well you think they're doing. They're not doing well. Patient says, I'm doing great, but you don't think so because you have not just subjective findings, but objective findings. Then they're in your quality control. That means what? A red card on their folder, a marking, something that lets everybody know in the practice, this is somebody in trouble and we're going to fix it. And that thing, that folder, that routing card, that travel card gets pulled off the usual lineup and it gets fixed. So when we talk about productivity, when we talk about results, we're talking in the same breath, we're saying results and quality control. So he developed the system based upon what was workable, which was the nature of my book, right? So all the management that you're learning came out of, I want the greatest number of people to have this technology. And because we're all in the help business, that's what is necessary.
Okay, so Arte, I want to thank you very, very much for your time, for coming here today.
Thanks for inviting
and sharing
me.
your wisdom with all of us. Everyone, let's give a hand to Arte Maren.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Well, that's all we have for Prosperity Talk today. This is P. Christopher Music reminding you to live your art.
You've been listening to Prosperity Talk with the financial prosperity coach, Christopher Music. For more information on prosperity principles and how to apply them to your life and your business, visit Christopher's personal website at pchristophermusic.com or connect with him on Facebook at facebook.com/pchristophermusicauthor. You may also call Christopher's office at 727-588-1540 to request more information or arrange for him to be a guest speaker at your next event. That's 727-588-1540 or visit pchristophermusic.com.